Welcome to the Love Your Story podcast. Our power lies in our ability to direct our life story with every choice and every thought. Welcome to the 21 Life Connection Challenges, where I provide 21 life hacks that have been set up to help you connect, take care of your fabulous self, create possibility in your one and only life, and get out of the doldrums or the anxiety that's following too close on our heels right now. This series of podcasts, the ones that are highlighting the challenges, they give you background on why the particular challenge was included in the 21 chosen challenges in the first place, a deeper understanding of the concept itself, and of course, ideas and ways to implement that challenge. Today, we are looking at challenge number 11, which is say yes to something you would usually say no to. Now, these simple challenges create big ahas, and they leave you with some great new tools to play with. So, of course, we are suggesting, especially during this disconnected time with COVID, that everybody get your copy of Life, Living Intentional and Fearless Every Day, and start doing these challenges. And if you can do them with a group of friends or people, even better, because there's more connection and fun that way, more accountability. Today, with this focus on challenge 11, say yes to something you'd usually say no to. I want you to stay tuned because we are stretching into yes, and this is a really good life hack.
Stories are our lives in language. Welcome to the Love Your Story podcast. I'm Lori Lee, and I'm excited for our future together of telling stories, evaluating our own stories, and lifting ourselves and others to greater places because of our control over our stories. This podcast is about empowerment and giving you, the listener, ideas to work with in making your stories work for you. Story power serves you best when you know how to use it.
Let me just start off by stating the obvious, people. If we keep doing what we are doing, we will keep getting what we are getting. If we keep saying no to the things that we habitually say no to, then nothing new is going to move into our lives. This is the premise of this challenge. Let me start with a story. In 2016, my friend and colleague Sally walked into my office and she said, "You've got to go to this emotional intelligence training that I just finished." I laughed at her because, in fact, really, she just indicated that I needed emotional intelligence training. And so I smiled at her sideways and I said, "I have to, do I?" And she said, "Yes." She was totally unapologetic. "You really have to work through your issues with men." Blunt as she was, I was also aware of this fact. And I also knew that I had already tried lots of things and I was stuck. So I asked her to tell me more. As she spoke, I decided I would look into it, that I would say yes. It involved buying an airline ticket to fly across the country. It involved, of course, the registration fees for the conference, paying for a motel or an Airbnb and Uber and all of the costs that were involved. And I was a single mom trying to support my family. So I would usually have said no to this kind of expense. But I said yes because in my gut, I knew that I was stuck. That choice to say yes changed everything for me. Everything. Because after a year of this training, after repeated trips across the country and a transition eventually into actually coaching in this program, I found my way through the walls that had been blocking me for so long, the walls that I had been stuck behind. And if I hadn't have said yes to this, I wouldn't have found my next step forward. I wouldn't have stepped onto the path that brought me to you today, to the airwaves, to my new relationship with my husband, to the creation of the Love Your Story podcast. Saying yes changed a lot. I want you to think about The Lord of the Rings too. When Gandalf invited Bilbo on an adventure, how did saying yes change his life? His understanding of the world, his experience. Can you even imagine the adventure lost, the change of that story? It wouldn't have existed if the protagonist had said no and decided to sit in the Shire because that was the most comfortable thing to do. The total story dissolves, and certainly his part in saving Middle-earth is no longer there. If you love a mystery, remember you never know where saying yes is going to take you. Now, we seldom realize the moments that are going to change our lives. You don't know when that yes is going to start a chain of events that saves the world. Bilbo had no idea he was going to save Middle-earth. You just don't know, and that's the adventure of it all. This has given you why to do the challenge, but I want to add to that. If you remember the movie Yes Man, in it, Jim Carrey takes an oath to say yes to everything that comes up, to everything anyone asks him to do. The movie is the tale of how his life drastically changes and all the adventures that happen because he's willing to say yes to new things. Giving a homeless man money, taking flying lessons, going on a date, throwing a bridal shower. Saying yes to all these things that he would have usually said no to creates a life for him that's 180 degrees different from the one he lived before. And it opened him up to finding love, to connecting with people, to seeing and doing things that he'd never done. That's the idea here. But rather than saying yes to everything, all you have to do on this day's challenge is to choose one thing to say yes to. But it has to be something that you would usually have said no to. And then if you like it, you can keep saying yes if you want. But let's start with one thing. This challenge is about creating possibility in your life. In one group who is doing the challenges, because we keep track and they report in one of the groups who was participating in the challenges, a woman shared that she approached the whole day with the question, can I say yes to that? And on that day, she pointed out her children got a special treat because things she had habitually been saying no to, she realized she didn't need to say no to them. And so a lot of fun and insight into her own habits was her takeaway. And the kids had a lot of fun and insight, just a different experience because their mom said yes to more things. You can imagine how they loved that. I had a gentleman who was taking the challenge tell me, I always say yes to everything and to everyone. So I adapted the challenge to be brave and say no when someone asked me to do something I didn't want to do. A little bit of style points there, adjusting it for him, but you'll know if this approach is the one that you need to take. We all know about boundaries, and we all know whether we're the person who says yes to everything when we shouldn't. So there is that possible adaptation. One woman in one of the groups, she said yes to getting highlights in her hair, and one said yes to buying a life coaching program that she'd been putting off. Another agreed to play games with her parents, despite the fact that she wasn't a game lover. And she came back and said how much she had bonded with her parents for a couple of hours and found that connection so worth the effort. But it was definitely something she would usually have said no to, so it shifted things for her. Does your significant other want to try something that he or she thinks would be fun, but you've said no to it? Well, today is the day to try something new. Say yes! Did you know that novelty is one of the things humans need most? We will go looking for it when things get too predictable and stale. Novelty feeds our souls. New things create possibility for us. And lest you stumble past what that means, possibility means something new, something magic, something wonderful has the chance to thrill you. But that magic requires that you get out of your comfort zone. In the TED Talk by Tracy Edwards, this was in 2020, she was the first woman to win the Yachtsman of the Year trophy, and she shares how saying yes created her best possible life.
So the question I get asked the most when I go and do talks is, how do you become an ocean racing sailor? And that's a really good question. And I've always wanted to say, I had a vision, which became a dream, which became an obsession. But of course, life's not like that. And one thing I'm really anxious for people to know about me is that my life hasn't gone from A to B, because how many people can say their lives just go from A to B? They think, I'm going to do this, and they go and do it. So I tell the truth. And the truth is that I was expelled from school when I was 15 years old, and my long-suffering headmaster sent a long-suffering note to my long-suffering mother, basically saying if Tracy darkens these doors of the school again, then we will call the police. And my mum looked at me and she said, darling, education is not for everyone. And then she gave me the best piece of advice anyone ever has given me. She said, every single one of us is good at something. You just have to go and find what that is. And at the age of 16, she let me go backpacking off to Greece. I ended up working on boats, which was okay. 17 years old, didn't really know what I wanted to do, kind of going with the flow. And then on my second transatlantic, my skipper said to me, "Can you navigate?" And I said, "Of course I can't navigate. I was expelled before long division." And he said, "Well, don't you think you should be able to navigate? What happens if I fall over the side?" Stop being a bystander in your own life. Stop looking at what you're doing and start taking part. This day for me was the day that my whole life started. I learned to navigate in 2 days. And this is someone who hates numbers and sees them as hieroglyphics. It opened up avenues and opportunities to me that I could never have imagined. I actually managed to get a ride on a Whitbread round the world race boat. It was with 17 South African men and me. I was 21 years old, and it was the longest 9 months of my life. But I went as a cook. I managed to survive until the end. And when I got to the end of this race, I realised that there were 230 crew in this race and 3 women, and I was one of them. And I'm a lousy cook. I'm a really good navigator. I think the second most profound thought in my entire life was, no man is ever going to allow me to be a navigator on their boat, ever. And that is still the case today. In 35 years of the Whitbread, there's only been 2 female navigators that haven't been on all-female crews, and that's how Maiden was born. That was the moment I thought, I've got something to fight for, and I had no idea that I wanted to have this fight, and it was something that I took to like a duck to water. I discovered things about myself that I had no idea existed. I discovered I had a fighting spirit. I discovered I was competitive, never knew that before. And I discovered my second passion, which was equality. I couldn't let this one lie. And it became not just about me wanting to navigate on a boat and having to put my own crew together and my own team, raise my own money, find my own boat so that I could be a navigator. This was about women everywhere. And this was when I realised that this was probably what I was going to spend the rest of my life doing.
She said yes to backpacking in Greece, yes to working on boats, yes to learning to navigate. And one yes at a time, she stopped being a bystander in her own life. Now know that this challenge isn't to add more to your plate of things to do, nor is it to complicate your life. We all know the importance of boundaries, but it is about saying yes to something that you would usually dismiss so that you can stretch into these new experiences. Freshness of possibility, fun, novelty. So push past that resistance. I'll leave you now to your yes day with this final quote from Martha Beck, International Life Coach. She says, quote, "Even if nothing but an alluring tickle, push the objections aside and move into the feeling of yes. Believe it or not, this sensation, not pain, not self-sacrifice, not stoic numbness, is the surest indicator that you're on the path that will lead you to the best possible effect you can have on the world." Unquote. Live big, live intentional, and you know what your challenge is this week. Say yes to something you would usually say no to.
This show is brought to you by the 21 Challenges group platform. If you are a leader of a group, any type of group, book club, network marketing, employee group, a youth group, a friend group, and you're in need of a fun, fresh, positive way to connect during this disconnected time, we've got an online program that'll create fun, stretching connection and engagement with your team. Your team will get a fully immersive platform for the 21 challenges and weekly coaching with Lori Lee as we spend 3 weeks creating awesome possibility. LoveYourStoryPodcast.com and look for the group link.
We'll see you in 2 weeks for the next Love Your Story podcast. Thank you for being here.